language. In fact, if you go to Guangzhou, you see all these African people, they can speak very fluent Chinese, most of them. Maybe they are developing their own varieties of Chinese. Nigerian Chinese, Mali Chinese. Yeah, so maybe things are happening in that sense.
I think it would be a very, very good opportunity to study it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Thank you. Right, that lady over there.
Thank you very much for sharing and organizing on this your ideas on this very interesting topic. Actually, this forum reminds me of the bilingual areas, especially Hong Kong and Singapore. They are code switching areas, and according to the some language theories, they both belong to the expanding circle. Then in such area, and in this area, actually there are many kinds of varieties of language, both Chinese and English. Like from the Chinese aspects, Cantonese, in Singapore, there are also many Chinese dialects affecting the Mandarin. But the two places at the same place, both English and Chinese meet each other. It has been part of people's daily life. Then, in such in such places with language contact, could you please maybe imagine or expect the direction of such kind of language contact in these places and maybe in other places when the English meets Chinese? And actually, I think this could have been a very research topic in the future. Could you please share with us some ideas on this topic from the research perspective? Thank you.
Well, I think there's a significant, huge difference between Hong Kong and Singapore in this context. One is in Singapore, Singaporean English has become the language of identity, really. So colloquial Singaporean English represents Singaporean identity. And colloquial Singaporean English has definitely been influenced by contact with Chinese dialects and possibly Malay. It's very difficult to be precise about what was the actual cause of any language change. You've got to be very careful of being, saying categorically this was the cause of change. But it seems extremely likely that a lot of colloquial Singaporean English has been heavily influenced by contact with Chinese dialect and Malay. In Hong Kong, it's quite different, I think. I mean, Hong Kong, the language of identity in Hong Kong is not English, it's Cantonese. People here speak Cantonese to be Hong Kongers. They don't speak English. They speak English much more as a kind of gateway to the international community or to business or education, but not, I don't think, as a marker of Hong Kong identity. So I think you're unlikely to see quite as much influence in Hong Kong English, however that's defined, than you will in Singapore, where Singaporean English has become a marker of national identity and therefore has to carry a whole bunch of local color in order to do the job as a language of identity. So that's how I'd see the differences.
But the two areas do have a lot of code switching. Let's think about it. 100 years ago, there is no such kind of code switching in their dialects, in their speech. But now, because word English affects these areas, code switching become quite popular in these areas.
Maybe I can comment on the spread of code switching in Singapore as well as in Hong Kong. Perhaps one fundamental difference is that, as Andy Kirkpatrick mentioned just now, in the case of Singapore, Singaporeans, regardless of their ethnicities, they can make meaning in English spontaneously. And to sustain that Singaporean identity, they have evolved the so-called Singlish or Singaporean variety of English, which is different from standard Singaporean English. Now, to summarize what I've just said, basically, we're saying most educated Singaporeans have two English styles. if the context calls for the use of the formal, more formal Singaporean English style, which is standardized, they can use it spontaneously. For example, in a lecture situation. But in the streets, restaurants, supermarkets, when they need to interact with each other, and while interacting with each other, they want to indicate we are fellow Singaporeans, then it would be politically incorrect not to use English. So they have two styles, most of them. Now, an extension of what Professor Kirkpatrick just said about Hong Kong is, unfortunately, or fortunately, Hong Kongers, Hong Kong Chinese I'm referring to, they are very reluctant to use English to interact with each other or one another spontaneously. In fact, it's a pain for teachers of English, if there are teachers of English here with us, to try to remind their students, it's an English class, speak English, please, right? It's not easy, right? Now here is then the time to comment on the reason why code switching occurs so frequently in both Singapore and Hong Kong and elsewhere. Now, identity making is certainly one of the motivations, but only when there is evidence of what we call negotiation of identity. In other words, I want you to think of me as somebody who is associated with those who can speak standard English in terms of maybe socioeconomic status, maybe the amount of money I can spend on this or that luxury item, things like that, right? Now, this takes place in anywhere, right, with regard to proficient speakers of English. But there is one other thing which is common, and that would, in fact, extend to places outside of Singapore and Hong Kong, where there is English medium instruction, and where the students find it necessary to talk about their schoolwork. You can't get away with English. Comments by? By the way, we call that the medium of learning effect. I can give you a reference later if you like.
Okay. Actually, I would challenge Julian a little bit about the use of Chinese ontology as part of developing well Chineses. It's about writing. Now, in this forum, there are lots of papers talking about academic writing in English only. And that remind me, some 30 years ago, I read a paper in Taiwan. At that time, there's a famous linguist, Tang Tingci. He proposed to write linguistic papers in Chinese. And there's a reader comment that you are not writing correctly because you first told your reader what's your conclusion, and then you show the evidence. This is not typical Chinese. Okay? So this is something actually, I think, on the other side of the language about the reasoning process that now it seems that we're switching to a Western mode. Just like in Taiwan, students writing education papers, they need to follow APA in Chinese, right? They write in Chinese, but the whole format, the whole move, all these studies in doing English academic writing apply to Chinese as well. So it's something that actually, while at word level, okay, Chinese is superior, right, as you propose. But on the side of writing, now actually this is a concern from us. If you look at Hanyu, Hanyu, they don't write this way, right? They try to eliminate all possibilities and tell you at the end what's the solution. So I think there is something deeper in when we think of well Chinese as a language that, as a lingua franca, can we do meaning negotiation in the Chinese way instead of the Western way?
Okay, I guess I have to respond to that. As I say already, as a panelist, I'm trying to be provocative. So I also frame it in the sense that, you know, we understand that in writing itself, if you are required to write Chinese characters, that is too much a challenge. But if technology allows you to go to the semantics, and if you acquire the whole system, actually it's quite more robust. But the first step is harder. So would the technology help us to such a way that we can, you know, overcome the first step hurdle and having the whole conceptual system? I'm arguing in that context, then Chinese may have some advantage. But I think all the discussion here, I must say that actually we are all using English. So it's under the presumption that there is world Englishes already, whether you're going to have the world Chineses. Now, we're not talking about where world Chinese would replace world Englishes, because that would be in the context we're writing. That's the attempt to do that, right? Since I have the mic, I want to say something that is actually also to be provocative, okay? We talk about identity, right? If you talk about these post-colonialism communities of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, we just have observed the language situation is a little bit different, right? There's also a little bit different. The reason why they are different, I think, most importantly, is that Taiwan and Hong Kong felt, whether it's true or not, it's up to interpretation, that they went to another colonial system in a post-colonial era. So the identity is not true identity. It's a reactive identity. It happened in Taiwan too. In Taiwan, for some period of time, Taiwan identity is equal to speaking Taiwanese. No more. If you think about carefully, why did Taiwanese come to the conclusion? The Taiwan identity now is speaking Mandarin. Because what? You know, Taiwanese speaking population is only 60 to 70%. You have Hakka speakers, you have Austronesian speakers. It's actually the same in Hong Kong. The percentage is not quite as, distributional. But, Hong Kong Cantonese speaker is not Hong Kongese. It's only 70 to 80%. They are the Hokkien speakers. They are the South Asians. Hong Kong identity, only in the reactive way, equals to Cantonese. If you're doing it in a proactive way, after your development, like in Taiwan, actually it should be bilingual, I would say. Yeah. It should not be Cantonese. It's a wrong reactive reaction, which Taiwan was able to correct. Because the first reaction, of course, is Taiwan identity is Taiwanese. Singapore was able to jump over that because it doesn't have a quote-unquote colonial master after the UK. So they jumped very fast to say, well, let's adopt Chinese, period. We don't need to be reactive. Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. I'm very pleased that we have, in fact, evoked and provoked a lot of interesting discussion. I'm mindful of the time, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the speakers for accepting my unreasonable request to, in a sense, interpret when world Englishes meet world Chineses in their own particular way from their respective vantage points. And it turns out to be very productive. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring panel discussion. Now let's welcome Professor Zhang to give a closing remark of this conference.
I won't do it more than 1 minute. So, well, thanks for all of you staying to the end of this panel discussion. Actually, this is my idea to put up this session because I found that there are two, Professor Wang and Professor Andy Kirkpatrick. One examined world Englishes, the other one examined world Chineses. And I think this is a unique occasion. And I hope there are people traveling from other places that you enjoy the weekend in Hong Kong, and those locals would have a relaxed and Merry Christmas. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zhang. Okay, and so just want to say thank you all for coming to this conference. I hope we had a good experience. And let's thank all the technical team and all the conference organizing committee. They have done a great job, okay? And the coach leaves at 5 o'clock, okay? I hope to see you in the future. Okay, thank you.